The war for Israel's freedom from terror continues as the campaign against these Iranian-backed terrorists resumes. Israel announced that it successfully eliminated another member of the Hamas's political bureau. But are new threats rising in Syria as Turkey is reportedly increasing its presence in that new government? Here to discuss this and more is Carolyn Glick, the International Affairs Advisor to the Prime Minister of Israel. She previously was a senior contributing editor of Jewish News Syndicate and the host of the Carolyn Glick Show on JNS TV. Carolyn, welcome back to Washington Watch, and congratulations on your new role.
Well, thanks very much. It's always wonderful to be on your program, Tony, and now with my new hat.
Yes, you wear many hats. This is a very timely hat for you to be wearing. I'm glad that the Prime Minister allows you to come back on the program because you're such a wealth of knowledge of what is happening in Israel and in the Middle East. Let's start with this strike. On Monday, the IDF announced that it eliminated Ismail Barhum, I think is how you pronounce his name, the head of Hamas's finances and institutions. What's significant about this latest elimination of the leadership of Hamas?
Well, it's very important that we be destroying Hamas's leadership so that they're not able to reconstitute themselves. And so we were able to eliminate most of their field commanders during the first leg of this war before we went into the latest ceasefire that just collapsed in a bid to receive our hostages home. And now that we're renewing our operations, the goal, as Prime Minister Netanyahu has set out, is to annihilate Hamas and restore and return the rest of the 59 hostages that are still being held in captivity, 24 of them alive, in Gaza. So those are the two goals that we're seeking in this, and part of the achievement of both of them is to eliminate the Hamas leadership.
Now, we heard a clip earlier from David Mincer, who talked about latest operations there in Gaza. There is a kind of a separation, dividing of north and south of the Gaza Strip, is there not?
Yes, there is. We had already established what we called the Netzarim corridor that bifurcates Gaza from north to south in order to control the flow of population, to prevent the reassertion of Hamas control over different parts of Gaza, and particularly northern Gaza, where it sits close to many of the communities that were overrun on October 7th, 23. So it's very important that they not reassert their command structure there in particular, but more generally, it's easier, we find, to control the security situation when we have control of the transit from north to south in Gaza, and we've reasserted our control over that corridor in the renewed operation.
Now, at the
we had left during the hostage ceasefire.
What have you found? Were they able to regroup and refortify during that break, during the ceasefire?
Well, they certainly weren't resting easy. I mean, Hamas exists in order to attack Israel, in order to destroy Israel. That's what they do. That's who they are. That's what they live for, and that's what they seek to die for. And so it's not surprising that every respite that they get, and even when they don't have a respite from fighting, all they're doing is rebuilding their forces, which is why this the goal of the war of annihilating Hamas as a military and political entity in Gaza is so essential for Israel's national security. And so, yes, obviously they used the time. We knew they would, but we took a calculated risk because we wanted to secure the release of our hostages, and we did secure the release of a significant number of them over the period of the ceasefire, as long as it lasted, and it ended when Hamas refused to continue releasing hostages.
Now, Egypt is attempting to mediate yet another round of ceasefires between Hamas and Israel. Do you think that another ceasefire is possible?
Again, I think the Prime Minister laid out very clearly what the goal is, which is in terms of ceasefire, no ceasefire. We want the hostages home, and so far, and we want to maintain our ability to destroy Hamas. So we're not going to accept a ceasefire that doesn't bring home hostages in a significant way, and that undermines our ability to achieve our war goal of destroying Hamas. So, every ceasefire offer presented by all sides is weighed against those two calculations.
Well, speaking of the hostages being held by Hamas, Hamas has recently released more footage of Israeli hostages being held. What do you believe the purpose behind that is for Hamas to be releasing that at this time?
It's to undermine our ground operation and our military offensive in Gaza, because it's all psychological warfare. So it's also psychological warfare. It's all about trying to frighten the Israeli public, trying to undermine public support for the war by presenting the war as some sort of a choice, that there could be an outcome other than disaster if Israel stopped or ended its goal of annihilating Hamas. Because everything that Hamas does, including the use of hostages, is a form of psychological warfare, which is what they are, against the Israeli people, is done in order to advance their goal of annihilating the Israeli people, the Jewish people. And so you have to see everything that they do inside of that context. They do nothing that they don't believe advances that goal. They'll do nothing that undermines that goal, because that's the only reason they exist, is to achieve that goal.
And that's the definition of terrorism. That is what
Right.
they do. I know you work very closely with the Prime Minister in his cabinet now, or with his staff. This has to weigh pretty heavily on him, because Israel is such a small country. I've been there just 3 times since the October 7th attack. But it is his goal to bring back these hostages, but at the same time, he has to keep the rest of the nation safe. I mean, this is a heavy, heavy burden for one man to carry.
The Prime Minister, I really think that he's a historic figure. I think it's not simply that he's Churchillian. I mean, I think that they're going to coin a new phrase of, Netanyahu or something like that. I mean, he defines moral courage. I don't know that there's a better way of putting it, and I, at the risk of sounding like a sycophant, I mean, it really is astounding, and it's a privilege to work at his side as he leads Israel in this war, because I really don't know what anybody else would do, but he has been heroic in his leadership of the war, and there's so many different pressures on him, on anybody who would be in that position, coming from 1,500 different angles. And to be able to withstand them and to just barrel forward and maintain total allegiance to the war goals and to advance them. And sometimes you put one in abeyance in order to advance the other. Sometimes you put the other in abeyance in order to advance the former. But always, always moving forward and advancing both of them. And it's a miracle that we came this far, because, of course, the idea of taking 251 hostages is that Israel will not be able to destroy Hamas because it will be too concerned about the release of the hostages. Well, here, as we annihilate Hamas, we have already brought about the return of 194 hostages. So it's true we have 59 that we still have to get out, but nobody thought that we'd come this far, and we have. And I'd say that it's a testament to his moral courage and to his wisdom that we've been able to do that. I don't think I'd have been able to do it, put it that way.
It has been quite amazing to watch the way he has led through this. As you mentioned, many different angles of attacks, both internally and externally. We're going to talk in a little bit about the internal, but externally, over the weekend, the Houthis in Yemen fired another missile into Israeli airspace. You've got increased activity in Judea and Samaria, but then also watching what's happening in Syria. Are you concerned about Turkey's involvement in this new government in Syria?
Yes, we're very concerned. I mean, we're concerned about this new government. We're concerned because the leader of the new government is an ISIS terrorist, and so some people think he's reformed, some people think he didn't reform, but he's the one who has the burden of proof. And so far, he hasn't worn that burden particularly well. In terms of proving his view. Israel, if there's some interest in Turkey, in Turkey or in Syria in making peace with Israel, fine. We're very happy to do so. But, we're not going to in any way endanger northern Israel. And that's why Israel seized the top of the Hermon mountain range and destroyed the Syrian armaments, of the Syrian military after Assad was overthrown. So we're trust but verify,
Right.
or distrust and verify. But all it is Israel's just defending ourselves. We're defending the Druze in southwest Syria and
Carolyn,
anybody else.
we got up against a break. We'll come back and finish that conversation. Carolyn, thanks for staying with us to continue this conversation. I want to make sure we wrap up here with the concern about what's happening in Syria with Turkey. I know that reportedly the Prime Minister convened a security meeting on Turkey's involvement in Syria. I mean, this is just another layer of the threats toward Israel. I mean, this is a pretty significant time in Israel's history.
It is a significant time in Israel's history. Look, we have a threat environment that would make anybody's skin crawl. I mean, it's dizzying. How many different fronts we're dealing with are active, and new ones that are arising, not even over the horizon. We see it very clearly. So we're, trying, we have to win this war, and that's what the Prime Minister is geared towards doing, and at the same time get organized to handle looming issues that are on our plate. But, Syria, I think it's important because, what we see now is this new sort of Sunni jihadist regime appears to have arisen in Damascus. And people say, well, maybe we were better off with Bashar. And I think it's important to realize that Bashar al-Assad was an Iranian proxy who committed genocide, an actual genocide against the Sunnis of his country, caused refugee flows and crises throughout Europe and beyond. And he's a monster. The fact that that it took a while apparently for Putin to agree to take him in, it's, I think, very telling. But he destabilized the region. He served as a proxy in Iran's operations against U.S. forces in Iraq for years. And anybody who thinks that, oh, well, he should have been protected, doesn't realize the situation. Iran is an existential threat, not only to Israel, but to all of the countries of the region. That, if they're able to achieve nuclear capabilities, it'll be an absolute disaster of biblical proportions. And so that has to be dealt with. And Syria was a linchpin of Iran's empire that stretches from Tehran to the Red Sea with the Houthis, and the Mediterranean Sea with Hezbollah and Hamas in Gaza, and Assad in Syria. So taking him out was a major blow to the Iranians and to Hezbollah. And it's very important, and we should all be thankful that he's gone. And what we have now, we'll have to deal with it now. Nobody thought that it was going to be easy with Syria.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the United States stands with you in the assessment of Iran. Mike Waltz, National Security Advisor, yesterday making comments very similar to that on one of the weekend shows. I want to turn, we just have a few minutes left, I want to turn to domestic issues. The Israeli cabinet passed a no-confidence motion on Sunday against the country's attorney general to begin the process of dismissing her. Now, critics of the prime minister called the move part of his effort to curb the independence of the judiciary and purge officials he considers disloyal. But explain the situation with the attorney general. I mean, she's accountable essentially to no one but the court, who is opposed to the prime minister.
So in the U.S. Constitution, you have something called separate but equal branches of government. And that's sort of the guidepost for everybody who's trying to assess balances of power between the three co-equal separate branches of government in the United States: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. In Israel, we don't have the kind of clear-cut separation, and certainly not an assertion of equality between the different branches of government. There had been equality, but because there had not been a clear distinction or a clear designation of each of them as separate and equal, we found that over time the judicial branch has taken on more and more powers from the executive and the legislative branches of government. And there's an effort to on the part of the government to kind of even things out and restore the balance from where it stands today. And that's gotten a lot of people with a lot of vested interest in the situation as it stands feeling very threatened. And we're seeing that in the actions of the Attorney General and in other actions by other appointed officials that are empowered by the way that things are today. So I think that what we're seeing here is a bit of a power struggle inside of Israel that makes things unpleasant and uncertain domestically. But I think at the end of the day, the people's will out, and you have elections. The people determine who they want to lead the country. They made a decision. It was very clear. The polls today, while they're in some cases they're all over the map, the public's position on Prime Minister Netanyahu and indeed his coalition is very clear. They want the government to continue to be operative and to be functioning. And so we'll have to see how things will play out on this particular issue. But I think over the horizon on this case, things will kind of settle down.
Is part of the concern that from the left, from those that have that power in the judiciary, that when this war is over, that the prime minister will return to a focus of judicial reform, which was where the nation was at prior to October 7th?
Well, I think the problem is that the way that they've been behaving requires us to do it at the same time as we conduct the war, and that's the problem. That we thought that things could be held in abeyance, but what we see is that the challenges to the authority of the government, as you said, the Attorney General is saying that the government doesn't have the authority to fire her, or to fire the head of the domestic intelligence agency, the Shin Bet. And it's manifestly untrue. So it's the kind of thing that you were not supposed to be here, but unfortunately, this is where we find ourselves, and so we have to roll with the punches and just deal with it.
We don't have time to unpack this because we only have about 40 seconds left, but is this not a representation of the deep state in Israel?
It's very similar to what you're seeing in the United States, yeah. And it's the same sort of people with the same kind of views of their place in the universe and in the power structure of their countries that are acting in both cases. Yes, it's almost identical, but obviously with necessary changes just because it's a different system and a different country, but very, very similar, yes.
Caroline, I want to thank you for joining us, and please know that I know that many of our viewers and listeners, myself included, are praying for you, praying for the Prime Minister, and for all of Israel.
Thank you very much. God bless.